Hi, my name is Nicole Dalton. Did you know that the Department of Transportation tracks the performance of domestic flights operated by large air carriers? And this information is published on the Department of Transportation's Air Travel Consumer Report. We were able to download this data from Kaggle.com and then upload it into Tableau to show you the visualizations that we were able to create that shows the correlations between flight delays and cancellations. To begin, our group had to meet to decide which direction we wanted to take with the data that was provided and answer a few questions to give a better understanding of that data. Those questions were identified as which states and airlines had the most delays and what day of the week were the delays most or less prevalent. How many cancellations did each airline have and which months had more or less? And finally, what were the cancellation reasons in relation to airlines to identify any trends?
Hi, I'm Estefania. Have you ever wondered how many flights take place across various airlines? We did too. So, we decided to build this visualization to identify just that. Here, we were able to identify the number of scheduled flights by airline. We also were able to identify the number of cancellations, as well as the number of arrival delays. How I was able to create these charts, they're basically duplicates of my flight chart, and basically just dragged over to the rows column the number of flights versus the airlines. And then for this one, instead of flights, I dragged over the cancellations, and then the same thing with delays. Once we were able to create the different charts for those three things, we were able to create a dashboard that clearly shows the comparison for all the airlines we had available. In Tableau, the drop-down highlight function allows us to quickly view the highlighted flight data by airline. So if I were to select Alaska Airlines, it would only show the columns for that airlines. From there, you can see the total number of flights versus the delayed flights versus cancellations. So you could do that with every single flight. It'll do the same thing. But I thought that was pretty neat. Next, we wanted to get a better sense of which airlines scheduled the most flights. So, using the flights chart we created previously, we arranged the data to show the number of scheduled flights from least to greatest. What caught our attention were the top 5 airlines. Here, we're showing the number of scheduled flights for these particular airlines. This is the main data set we will be using throughout the story. When working with the data, we realized that the arrival delays field wasn't exactly accurate since it contained negative values. Negative values mean that the flights had actually arrived earlier than scheduled. Therefore, to get the true count of arrival delays, we created a calculated field called delays, which flags only positive value in the field as 1 and any negative values as 0. I'll show you how I was able to do that. We initially thought to scrub the data from the source, but we later realized that we would also potentially be missing out on any other information. So we left that alone, and we figured out another way to do that, which was to kind of exclude negative values from the arrival delay field. So we went to analysis, clicked on create calculated field, and from there I was able to create this delays field. Here is how I was able to do that. Basically, I'm checking to see if any values in the arrival delay field are greater than 0, then set it to 1. Otherwise, set them to 0.
Hello everybody, this is Rodolfo Sosa. I'm going to be doing my part related to the cancellations for this project. So some of the things that I'm going to be informing you is how I did some of my sheets and talk a little bit about my dashboard. So this first sheet that you see is airline cancellations per month. So some of the things I did were just really basic. For this sheet, I wanted to keep it as basic and simple as possible. So all I did was add months to the columns, some canceled to the rows. That created this chart. And in order to make it stand out more, all I did was add the airlines to the color scheme for the marks. This color-coded each one, and I also adjusted the filters to only show the top 5. The total top 5 cancellations for the airports. This in shows both Southwest Airlines, Atlantic Southeast Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines, and SkyWest Airlines as the most cancellations per month. As you can also see, if you look at the months down below, you could see that the second month, which is February, is the one that has the most during this time period. So now I'll be moving on to my next one, which is related to that, which is the cancellation reasons. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same thing. I just added another extra layers and steps. So what I actually added was cancellation reasons to rows and airlines to columns, along with adding some cancels to the label and adjusting some of the filters in order to create this. And it just shows everything from A, B, C, D, which are the 4 cancellation codes, along with the different airlines across the board. If you look at by looking at this information, I did color code it to make it easy by the airlines, and you could correlate that these codes actually match up with the cancellations. So if you notice, the code B, which is weather that affects cancellations, has caused the most cancellations per airlines, and this is shown that it's mostly the most time that's impacted all correlate during the second month, which is February. And if you really look at this further, some of these airlines are located in some of the biggest cities and areas and across the region of the United States. To continue from the cancellation by recent codes, my next sheet talks about the top 5 airlines cancellations. So pretty much this, I kept the simplicity of it. I didn't want to make it too complicated. So what I did was just really simple. Put in rows, I put some canceled. On columns, I put airlines. And then I put some canceled to label and airlines to color scheme. That way you get the visualization as seen. In order to show these top 5s, what I did is just the same thing as the other ones, where I just changed the top filter to the top 5, and that shows you the same information as the other ones, but now instead of having the months like in the previous ones, now you see it as the total amount of cancellations through the year per airlines. As you can see, the total amount Southwest Airlines does have the most during the whole year, and it goes on from Atlantic Southeast, American Airlines, then SkyWest, and finally Delta Airlines. And from this, I went on to create my dashboard. So the dashboard consists of the top 5 airline cancellations and the airline cancellation for months. So from this, you could adjust it through here, through this little pane right here, and you can actually look at them and interact with the calculations. You could see the total per year and the total across the 12-month spectrum.
In this site, we wanted to look at arrival delays by state over a period of 7 days We decided to use simple bar graphs for this in order from greatest to least. By using the highlighter function, we were also able to narrow down our selection by state and views the total number of delays on the lower left. The multicolor bar chart on the lower right shows a breakdown of the number of delays by state based on the day of the week. Please note that we are still using the data set with the top 5 airlines identified with the most scheduled flights. This is a showing of the top states that had the most arrival delays. In this slide, we are showing the total arrival delays again. This time, we want to create an area map over a period of 7 days to see how each state did with arrival delays. The highlighter drop-down section can be used to narrow down a single state. Here, we can see that for all states, there seems to have been a drop in arrival delays on the 6th day. This slide is similar to the previous one, except now we are looking at arrival delays by the top 5 airlines as we focused on in the beginning. The area chart below looks almost identical to the previous slide, except the number per day has decreased. Using the data in the previous slide, we were able to determine which airports and states were impacted by the 5 airlines we chose that experienced airline delays. The cities identified are some of the largest cities in the United States. They are also some of the largest airports, and they have many inbound and outbound flights on a daily basis. You will notice that here within Tableau, the map, that you can click on different airlines to show them differently on the interactive map that is included. So you can filter by airlines, by airports, or by states. These can give you detailed information when you hover over the mark on the map that shows you how many delays that airport, state, and or airline had at that time. I now want to share with you briefly what I did to find and create the data visualizations that I did create. On this first slide, I started by trying to find out the arrival delays by state and day of the week. To do so, I added state to the column and the sum of delays to the row. I filtered it by state and airlines, and I color-coded it by day of the week, and I turned on the text. I also chose the ascending function to sort it so that I could see greatest to least. From here, I duplicated the last dashboard, and I chose only the top 5 states, and I excluded the rest of the states. This showed me a very detailed 5-layer bar chart based off of the state and the days per week in color code with the top 5 arrival delays. On this dashboard, I recreated the last dashboard. And from here, I took out the day of the week filter that was on there previously. So this gave me a sure number of the total number of arrival delays by state, so that there was no filter to show the different days of the week. From here is where I decided to go from state to airline and show you the top 5 delays by airline rather than states. Taking this data and recreating it, I chose to recreate it and also show the top 5 delays by airline and state. So as you can see, I'm hovering over California, and you'll notice that this darker green color is Southwest Airlines, whereas green is identified as Delta. This broke up the filter by states and by airlines, and it color-coded it by airline. I was able to turn the text on to show the number of delays for those each color-coded. Over here on the right, you'll see the key that shows which color is which airlines. So if, again, I click on this, it will show just this information. This was an American Airlines flight to Florida, and they had 32,256 delays. From there, I wanted to show which day of the week had the most or the least amount of delays. Once I created this line graph, it was very obvious that day 6 had the least amount of delays overall based off of every airline that was showed. If you hover over this, you can see that blue was California, orange was Florida, red was Georgia, this light blue was Illinois, and the green was Texas. Here, I took the information from the previous slide and I decided that I was going to do it per airline rather than state. So here you can see that it's still clear that day 6 had the least amount of delays as any other day for every airline, but it's color-coded by airline rather than states.
After collecting all the appropriate data, we realized that it would be interesting to make a connection between canceled flights and the factors that could have made the companies cancel their flights and see if there is any correlation between them. When we take a look at weather delays, for example on this slide, we realize that companies have the most weather delays in their appropriate airports. Each company is operating in specific airports. For example, Delta operates and manages its airplanes mainly in Atlanta, while American Airlines maintain their airplanes in Chicago, O'Hare, and United Airlines hubs are Newark and Los Angeles. So it makes sense that they all have their cancellations and delays mostly in their respective airports. While combining the total canceled flights and the total flights, we made a percentage to have an estimate of the cancellation rate based on the airline's fleet. So we dragged and put the airlines in the columns and the sum of canceled flights in the rows. And by using the analysis tool, it gives us an idea of the total canceled flights by companies. So we know who had the most canceled flights over the year. American Eagles Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and Atlantic Southeast Airlines are the 3 companies that experienced the most canceled flights. Of course, it's interesting to compare this data to the total of flights each company is offering. So we dragged the total flights in the rows, and that gives us an idea of the correlation between the cancellations and the flights. American Airlines and Atlantic Southeast Airlines are definitely doing worse than other companies since they have less flights and more cancellations. This means that these 2 companies are not managing very well canceled flights. On the other hand, Delta Airlines is really well managing cancellations since they are the second company with the most flights and they are really low when looking at their cancellations. However, it's interesting to take another approach by comparing the percentages, and this gives us a completely different ranking about cancellation. For example, Southwest Airlines and Atlantic Southeast Airlines have more cancellations based on percentages. Since there is a correlation between the number of flights and cancellations, we can look for the reasons why companies are experiencing more cancellations and delays rather than others. We can see there is a big concentration of flights by the Sun Belt and along the Atlantic coast, but no correlation with delays and cancellations due to the airport or weather. So that leaves us with how companies are managing their crews and their aircraft. Delta has decided to go with a brand new fleet of aircraft. And this is the reason why this company is doing very well with cancellations and delays. They have a huge advantage compared to American Airlines and Atlantic Southwest Airlines. Southwest decided to go half-half on new and used airplanes. So the real deal with this company is to manage its employees and fleet to make sure that they focus on specific airplanes and crews to avoid any delay or cancellations. Overall, this data is very helpful to understand how companies are managing their fleet to avoid cancellations. The previous slide, we are not able to accurately determine the primary reason for cancellations. In this slide, we are assuming that cancellations are due to weather. Here, we can see that at various airports, weather delay may have been a cause for flight cancellations. Here we are able to get a sense of the number of flights scheduled throughout the US based on the map. There is heavy air traffic flow in California, Texas, Illinois, Georgia, and Florida. Based on the number of flights scheduled in the US, we wanted to determine the number of flights versus cancellations and determine the average cancellation rate per airline. Based on the previous slide, we were also able to determine the top 5 airlines with highest cancellation percentages.
Hi, this is our whole group, and we decided to get together one final time for the conclusion. So the conclusion, we kind of, based on the data, we were able to determine the amount of flights, the delays, and cancellations. We were also able to identify February as one of the highest in cancellations among months, and it was due mostly to cancellation code B, which is weather. And of course, over the course of the week, delays seem to occur more frequently at the beginning on Mondays and about midweek Wednesday and Thursday.
Overall, it's been very good learning with Tableau.
It was very difficult in the beginning when you're fresh eyes with this software trying to maneuver through it and create these visualizations to look as professional as those that you see within the video galleries. But ultimately, as a team, I think we came together very well to get this completed in a very professional manner.
Working on Tableau also teaches patience. Agreed. But overall, I think it was a pretty good hands-on experience. And I think a lot easier to work with compared to other software I've personally worked with. So that was an interesting experience for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.